everyone. Here we're going to be differentiating the two different types of skin, which are thick and thin. We know that several distinct layers of keratinocytes in various stages of development will form the epidermis. In most regions of the body, the epidermis has 4 strata or layers. Just as a side note, strata is plural for stratum. So the 4 strata are going to be the stratum basale, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, and the thin stratum corneum. This is called the thin skin. Where exposed to friction is greatest, such as in the fingertips or palms of your hand and soles of your feet, the epidermis has 5 layers or strata: the stratum basale, the stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and a thicker stratum corneum, and this will be called the thick skin. It is important to highlight that the cells present in these layers are going to be the same cells independent if they are present in thick or thin skin. Therefore, the stratum basale will contain the stem cells and some initially differentiated keratinocytes, in addition to the cell bodies of melanocytes and the Merkel cells, which are there for touch. The stratum spinosum will be made of keratinocytes that contain the keratin intermediate filaments, together with the Langerhans cells, which are the types of macrophages in the epidermis. The stratum granulosum will contain just keratinocytes that contain the protein keratohyalin, which will convert the keratin filaments into keratin, and also the laminar granules, which will release this lipid-rich substance, which will serve as this water-repellent secretion. And then we have the corneum, which is made of corneocytes, which are the mature keratinocytes filled with keratin. And lastly, we have the stratum lucidum, which is just present in thick skin, but it will also contain, similar to the stratum corneum, the dead keratinocytes with large amounts of keratin, but this time the keratin is orderly arranged into sheets. Now, at this point, you should be thinking a couple of things. Why is it that the cells within the stratum granulosum and above it start to die? And then the other question is, why is it that the strata below the granulosum has other cell types besides keratinocytes, and the granulosum, the lucidum, and the corneum only have keratinocytes? I want you to think about those questions, and then on the next slide we can answer them. First, let's describe the image we're seeing here. This insert over here is coming from this image. This top part over here is the epidermis. Down here we have the dermis. We will be talking about the epidermal ridges and the dermal papilla in the next few slides. But just so you have an idea, the image in the middle represents thin skin, and the image on the right represents thick skin. All of this is the epidermis, and then down here is the dermis. Same thing on the thick skin. All of this would be your epidermis, and then this part over here would be your dermis. Notice how the stratum corneum on the thick skin is way thicker compared to the stratum corneum on thin skin. This is what makes, or this is one of the characteristics that makes the difference between thin and thick skin. The other difference is that on thick skin you have a layer right over here between the stratum granulosum and the stratum corneum, which is called the stratum lucidum. Visually now you can understand the difference between thick and thin skin. With regards to the questions that we asked earlier, the reason why the cells that are present in the stratum corneum, in the stratum lucidum, and in the stratum granulosum die is because of that lipid-rich substance that is produced in the stratum granulosum. Remember that the epidermis does not have blood vessels, that the cells that are present in the epidermis, they're going to receive their nutrients from the blood vessels that are present down here in the dermis by diffusion. So the blood vessels come all the way up to the stratum basale, and the nutrients are going to diffuse into the epidermis. However, if you have above the stratum corneum the production of this lipid substance, then this means that the nutrients that are coming from the dermis are unable to cross this lipid barrier. So the nutrients do not reach the stratum corneum or part of the stratum granulosum, and in case of thick skin, the stratum lucidum. So that's why the cells above the stratum granulosum start to die. The other factor is that because these cells die, then it doesn't make sense that the body is going to waste resources on other differentiated cells like macrophages in case of the Langerhans cells or Merkel cells, because they're going to die. So they keep these differentiated cells, even melanocytes, below the stratum granulosum, where they're able to get their nutrients by diffusion from the dermis, and therefore they survive. So the body is not wasting their resources on cells that are going to eventually die. I hope this makes sense, and if it doesn't, make sure to reach out. In skin that's subjected to friction or pressure, an area called a callus often forms when the stratum corneum of the epidermis increases in thickness. This increased number of cell layers will provide added protection in the area that experiences more mechanical stress. This is going to be due to an increased cell production in the affected area, and consequently an increase in the production of keratin as well, right? Because the keratinocytes are the ones that produce the keratin. If you have more keratinocytes, it makes sense that you will have more keratin. Therefore, on the image on the left, we can see this individual has a lot of calluses located in the palm of the hand, probably from doing a lot of work with heavy material, or even individuals that lift a lot of weight in the gym, they will show signs of calluses in the palms of their hands. In addition to calluses, the skin over bony prominences, which are structures that stick out a little bit and are made by bones, will develop a cone-shaped structure that's called a corn. The base of the cone is at the surface, but the apex actually will extend deep into the epidermis. As you can see on this image, that there is a big hole in the pinky toe of this patient. For the corn to be removed, the podiatrist has to dig deep to be able to remove the entire corn. Because these corns are usually formed in these bony areas where there is constant friction, then there's a pressure on the corn, which may be quite painful because they will be affecting or interacting with the pain receptors. It is important to add that calluses and corns, they can develop in both thick and thin skin.